Okay, so something I've been thinking about a lot recently is Formula One pit stops. We all know that they're incredibly fast, with the world record being something like 1.8 seconds to change all four wheels. However, if a driver gets some damage to their front wing and they need to change that during a pit stop, how are the team able to change all four tyres and front wing within 12 seconds? Because actually seeing this is fairly rare on a race broadcast, and when we do, we just see the pit crew members crowding around and it's quite hard to see what is going on.
Well, in this video, we're going to find out. Okay, time to put it down. Time to put it down. Oh.
And so that's my goal for the video, to visually show you everything that goes on in a front wing change, even down to the components that are being reconnected and disconnected inside. Now, Formula One teams are continuously practicing this pit stop choreography every race weekend. But they won't just be practicing changing all of the tyres. They'll also be practicing having to change out the steering wheel in case there's a problem, or if your driver gets a penalty where no one can touch the car for 5 seconds. And in this video's example, changing the front wing. Also practicing if the front or rear jack equipment are faulty and they have to move in a replacement. And all of this practicing of the different choreography types isn't just limited to the race weekends. The teams are also practicing this back at their headquarters, where they can be more thorough about the analytics to be even quicker. And the reason this is so important and to be replaced so quickly is because the front wing provides about 25% of the car's overall downforce. And while some parts you'll see are different depending on the team, the results are typically the same. And a great example of this is the driver's drink system. Now, some drink systems are usually utilized at the back of the driver's race seat, but some people have complained about the balance of the car or that it gets too hot during a Grand Prix, so some teams utilize having this within the front wing. The next thing you're also having to disconnect is all of the electrics. Yes, the front wing has many electrics, including all the different types of sensors, but also it has the onboard camera. The onboard camera is needing to send power and video signal back and forth, and this also has to be easily disconnected and connected when doing a front wing change. So how is this all done so easily? Well, the secret weapon is down to these 4 nose pins, which can either be attached onto the front wing or onto the chassis. These 4 pins make it possible to align up the front wing perfectly into the tub every single time it's inserted and locked into place. And from my chats with mechanics working in Formula One, there isn't really any performance advantage to doing it one way or the other. For example, this is a front wing from 2019 from Racing Point, which utilizes having the pins on the back. Whereas if you go to one of their older ones where the team was known as Force India, you can see that the pins are actually onto the tub there. So even teams are changing up where they're utilizing these pins. Because these pins can be inserted in the exact same place every single time, it means disconnecting and reconnecting the drink system and the electronics is way simpler. So for the water system, they can use a dry brake coupling, which has a one-way valve. That way, when it's disconnected, the water doesn't spray everywhere and keeps within the tubes. And for the electrical connection, imagine it very much like a XLR cable where it has a male and female end. So as long as everything's all aligned correctly, it means that the electrical pins can connect perfectly. Okay, so we've now discussed what's being disconnected and reconnected during a front wing change, except from the most vital part, the actual locking and unlocking of the pins, and crucially how this is affecting the choreography of the pit stop. So let's quickly go over the traditional pit stop roles which are making contact with the car and then seeing which roles are having to be changed. First up, we've got these 2 guys, the front and rear jack. They're the first ones to make contact with the car and to lift it up from the front and from the rear. Also at the front, we have 2 crew members who are making the front wing adjustments, and then 2 crew members who are standing in the middle to help hold onto the car to keep it stabilized. Next up, we've got these 4 wheel gunners, and their job is to unbolt the nuts and to re-screw them back in. Then following on from that, you have the 4 crew members putting the wheel on, and then 4 crew members to take the wheel off. But now let's imagine that the driver has just crashed into the back of somebody and damaged their front wing, and it now needs to be replaced. So what would that now look like? So firstly, a few of the pit crew members are having to change their role or move position, starting off with the front jack. Because they won't be able to utilize the front wing to lift it up, they're now having to be positioned over to the side. They will now use a flat jack that slides right underneath the car once the rear has been lifted to then raise the front. The next roles to have a slight change are the wheel gunners. They're still responsible for undoing and redoing the bolts, but they're also responsible for taking the old tyre off and putting the new tyre on. Very similar to something that you find in Formula 2. The 2 crew members who were originally making the front wing adjustments will now be taking away the front wing. The new front wing is being brought in by the original front jack and an additional crew member. And these additional crew members are still working through a normal pit stop. They're just there on standby in case the front or rear jack aren't working. And finally, we have the 4 who are directly unlocking the front wing. These are the wheel off and wheel on pit crew members. And who better to explain this than someone who actually used to do this for the Mauritia Formula 1 team. So this is Dean Chandler, who is head of car build at Tour de Force, and they basically give Formula 1 cars a second life after they've been retired from their season. We've done a whole video about it before, so I'll link towards that at the end of the video, but now let's find out how this mechanism works.
Instead of taking the wheel off, the gunman will take my wheel off, have my nose key, which was always on me, and I would switch and undo the nose. 4 locking mechanisms around it. There's one here, same on the other side, and then there's one tucked under the wishbone here. Essentially, the locking mechanism is a pin and a hook that lock together. The part that the mechanics will unlock is a rotating cam, as we call it, and it will come in and hook onto the nose and lock it into the place and gets tightened up. Pit stop tool, some will just have a hexagon like an Allen key type. In this case, it has a spline. Instead of it being flat like this one is, it would have more of a point, so that as you got it in the hole, it will guide itself in. So you could just smash it into the hole and get it undone. One of my cars in the day, the position of the cam was actually on the nose. We would leave the tool in the nose and that would go away, and the new nose would come in with the tool pre-installed, and it was actually just on an elastic band that was wrapped around the camera pod, and you would just tighten it up and snap the elastic band up and get out of the way. We trained for it so much, to you it feels like it took forever, but then you might watch it back afterwards and so actually that was pretty quick.
So step 1, the car comes into the pit box. Step 2, the pit crew members undo the 4 cam locks holding onto the front wing. Step 3, the front wing is now taken off and taken into the garage out of the way. Step 4, the new front wing is brought in with the pins going back into the locks. Step 5, all 4 pins are now locked into place and all the crew members move back. And finally, step 6, the car now leaves the pit box. And by the way, let me know if you're interested to learn about how they're doing their pit stop practice at their headquarters. They've got some really cool tech there, and hopefully if they see this video and see that enough people want to do it, they might reply to my emails. Who knows? But thanks very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed learning about how they're changing the front wing in less than 10 seconds. My name is Matt Amos. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.